Hi, my name's Tara, and welcome to Build a Better Champs program, Learn Community Management. So let's start off with about me. If you're watching this live during the Game Accessibility Conference, Europe Edition 2022, you already know who I am. You've been seeing me all day. But maybe you're checking this out on YouTube after the fact, and you're just learning about it. So I am the co-conspirator of this very conference, partnering with my friend Ian Hamilton to put this all together to teach more people about accessibility in gaming. I'm also the Xbox Game Studios accessibility lead, where I work with all of our studios and my partners in user research, as well as studios quality, to help our studios make and achieve all of their accessibility related goals. It's something I'm incredibly passionate about, and I'm glad that I'm able to take my years of game development experience and my years of accessibility and gaming experience and finally put them together for one thing. I want to start off with just talking about CHAMPS programs in general. Obviously, to build a better CHAMPS program, you must already know what a CHAMPS program is. Now, at XGS Accessibility, we do run a CHAMPS program. So I am the leader of the program, and then I have one main champ from each of my studios. And basically the goal of a champs program is to make it so not one person is in charge of all accessibility. It's literally not feasible. You need to make sure that accessibility is spread out and that there are multiple people who are going to be contributing. If only one person is in charge of all accessibility, it just literally won't work. The thing is, they're not going to be in every meetings, they're not going to be in every project, they're not going to be embedded when every decision happens. And so by using a CHAMPS model where the responsibility is spread, you're able to get more surface area. Now for me, we have me at the center, and then we have one at all of my studios. But a lot of my studios have their own CHAMPS program within them, replicating literally the same process. So if you're at a studio, you may have one champ and then additional champs who are in production, audio, design, programming, level design, like you name it. Anywhere there could be an implication based on accessibility, but on whatever decisions being made, you would put a champ there. And the goal is by, again, spreading that knowledge around the studio and having someone always thinking about accessibility. It's more likely you're going to create accessible products because it's always someone there to be thinking about it. But really, one of the other goals that you're having when you are forming a CHAMPS program is making a community. You are a group who are all focused around the same topic, the same theme, and the same goal. It's a community of developers who are trying to make an accessible product. And that's why learning community management can be so important. Because again, you're trying to build and sustain a healthy community. Now you may be thinking, Tara, why should we listen to you about community management? You're not a community manager. And you're absolutely right. I'm not. And actually, for a lot of my game development career, community management wasn't something I interacted with. Especially when I first started, before a lot of devs were on social media, we were actively discouraged from engaging in any conversation with the public. For a long time, community management was this black box where I didn't understand what happened, and I knew sometimes people were nice and sometimes people were mean, but the community managers were always on top of it. And I'm going to be honest, it really wasn't until I was working at Turtle Rock Studios with my friend Shane, who you may know as the person who volunteers at all of the game accessibility conferences and frequently runs our social media, that I saw her on Evolve interact with the community. I remember very, very clearly there was one day on the project where on Twitter, this one player was just spewing hate at us, at the game, at our team, at everything. And she interacted with this person who was being so negative. And she was able to talk to this person and then slowly inform them about the game, about our studio, about our culture, and over time was able to convert this person, perhaps one of the most toxic people I had seen commenting on our social media, from a naysayer to one of the best fans we had. He was participatory in our forums, he was being positive on social media, he would come to our live streams, he would just hang out and advocate and talk about how great the game was. And for me, it was like, what is this black magic? What did Shane do? What mystical abilities did she have and were able to harness to make this change in this person? I needed to be able to take that and use it for my own nefarious purposes. And by nefarious, I actually mean creating a culture of accessibility when people maybe aren't necessarily ready or very far along in their game accessibility journey. And after being around Shane and watching her engage, I did become inspired. And I've asked Shane, like, what is your process? What were you doing? And she said it was quite simple. The first step was engage the community members. The next step was inform. Tell them what's going on and be honest. And then the next part was advocate. Advocate for you, advocate for your team, and advocate for your product. Over time, I've been able to learn more and more about the process that I was seeing Shane do. And I'm also lucky enough that there are people like Victoria Tran, the communications director for Among Us, who've actually kind of put this entire process Shane was putting players through into words. Victoria talks about the community journey and the steps someone has to go through when they become a member of a community. They start off very simply being a new member of the community. They then transfer to regular member. As they continue to grow and become more engaged with the community, they become a loyal supporter. And then after they have spent time in the community, they make the final transition from loyal supporter to advocate. And we see something really similar in champs programs. And so that really got me thinking when I saw this, layout that Victoria had put together. Can this also just be a champ's journey? Can this be what a champ goes through when they get introduced into your program? And I think the answer is very much yes. The other thing that Victoria did was take a layout of new member, regular member, loyal supporter, and advocate and explain what it means in terms of their relationship to your game and interacting with your community. And I do think a lot of the things that she laid out during this process still stand true. But obviously, it's not exactly the same in that we're not getting them to play a product or monetize or anything like that. We're trying to get them invested in accessibility in a workplace program. But again, a lot of it still stands up. So I went through and I made what I think is my version of her growth chart. So if we start with a new member, they're going to be difficult to get to act. They're new here. They don't really know the ropes. They don't know what they're doing. We're not even entirely sure why they joined at this point, to be honest. It's important to recognize in a professional setting, in a champs program, that they may not have opted into being a part of this community we're forming. It literally may have been assigned to them as a job role. And that's okay. But that makes it even more important for us to keep in mind that they can be turned off by a bad first experience. And we really don't want people to have a bad first experience with accessibility because that takes a lot of work to undo. But we need to recognize this is where they're going to start off as a new member. After someone's been in a champs program for a little bit, they're kind of going to naturally go to the next stage of regular member via whatever sort of meetings or status updates, that sort of thing that you have going on. They're going to be, kind of casually up to date on the program, at least at a high level. But that doesn't mean they may be completely invested into everything that you're putting out or that they're even particularly attached. They'll know about it. They're there. They're showing up. But that doesn't necessarily mean that, it's their favorite place to be or even how much of that work that you're putting into your champs program they're taking back and putting in their day-to-day work. So obviously the next goal is to get them to transition to loyal supporter. At this point, people are going to be invested in your Champs program. And that means that they're going to be committed to the accessibility journey, which is the whole point of having a Champs program in the first place. But it's also important to know that they can still be lost to other programs or other goals. It could be other diversity and inclusion initiatives. It could be literally just other things happening on their project. I mean, let's all face it, sometimes new shiny things come up, and as game devs, we get a little distracted. As a loyal supporter, that can still happen. And so we have to be able to take that final step of transitioning them from loyal supporter to an advocate. Now, when you have advocates in your program, that's when you really, really start to shine. And you can be proud because you'll start having contributors. It's not just whoever the owner of the Champs program is keeping it going. You will have other people producing and making content. And then they'll be telling their coworkers. They will be growing. They will have their own set of initiatives that they are trying to ramp up. And it's also great because since these people are invested in the Champs program, they will want the program to be the best version of the program it can be, which means they will think about and provide feedback, which is amazing. And of course, they will be welcoming to others as they join and telling them about how great the program is. I'm really, really excited to say that although I've been applying this community strategy methodology not for very long in my Champs program, maybe 6 months, that I have advocates. I'm really proud to say that, from Xbox Game Studios, we have Dorian and Xander and Ryan all presenting at this conference. And to me, they have hit this top tier of advocate. They are contributing. They are telling their coworkers. They're providing feedback, and they're welcoming you into the accessibility world right now. Now, once we understand all of these steps, we need to think about how we can push Champs from the new member all the way to advocate by using the process that Shane had told me about engaging, informing, and advocating. Now, we've established that with our Champs, they're a community, and the best thing we can do is act as a community manager to keep it healthy, active, engaged, and our community members growing in their journey. But that again means that we have to understand what a community manager is. Again, stealing from Victoria Tran, there is a difference between a marketing message and a community message. Marketing is focusing inwards. How do you reach as many people as possible? And how do you appeal to them? How do you grab their attention? And I'm literally just taking snippets from Victoria's blog at this point. But for a Champs program, for a community, it's about focusing inwards. How do we make our current space better? How do we connect members? How do we engage? And then again, that key of making them advocates. And I love this little image that she made that kind of shows the difference. But if we think about, again, the discrepancy between a gamer and a product and a champ and a program, there are some differences, but I do think literally the exact same model can apply. I actually think that using the marketing strategy of one to our Champs is great for things that are compliance related, being able to just take the information and get it out. I frankly don't really want my Champs talking about compliance that much anyway. That's not exciting, that isn't pushing boundaries, it's not innovative. But for other things in our Champs program, I would love for them to talk to each other. And so it's an amazing practice to be able to create a community message that everyone can share, that then all of our developers can talk to each other about. Again, the whole goal of having a Champs program is to spread out the responsibility of accessibility. So if we have more people talking without the Champ lead there, more accessibility is going to be happening, which again is why it's so important to use a community manager strategy. Now, obviously with the Champs program, it's not going to be the same as players engaging with a game and its community. Gamers are on Twitter, Reddit, other social media, and Champs aren't going to be there or doing that. And you're probably not going to encourage it either because that's probably under NDA, whatever you're working on. And so you don't want to share it. And so the first thing that we have to do as champ leads is create the spaces in which we can engage with our champs. And there needs to be multiple places that champs can engage with you, because everyone's going to be a little different in how they want to be a part of your community. Now, for the Xbox Game Studios Accessibility Champs, we have a few different things that I run. So for example, I have my monthly champ syncs, and that's sort of an all hands, if you will, where we have both news and information about updates to the program, as well as informational presentations. It could be something from our user research team, or it could even be something from one of our champs sharing the learnings to our other champs. We also create spaces like office hours, and I actually love our office hours. So we have them once a week, the same time, and it's just an open space where our different teams can come in and ask accessibility questions. But we are totally fine if no one has any questions of just using the hour to chat or gossip about the latest accessibility stories or whatever's trending on Twitter. And it's kind of created this culture of people who show up to our office hours with absolutely no questions, who just want to sit in and hear more about the conversation. And we are totally down with that. Again, we've created a space where people can just talk about these things freely, and you need to be able to do that. For you, it may not be in office hours, but literally just creating an unstructured space for these conversations is incredibly important. Now, the next thing that I do is make sure that all of my champs have dedicated time to talk to me and the Xbox Game Accessibility team. What's going on with their studio? What do they care about? What do they want to learn more about? Create that opportunity for them to engage directly with me, and again, form a relationship where they can provide me feedback. I want to make the Champs program the best it can be, and so if there's something wrong, we need to have a relationship where they feel comfortable to be able to tell me what they would like to see improved, whether it's with something that I'm doing or something that another part of Xbox is doing. Being able to create spaces where people feel safe and comfortable. So there are open spaces where everyone says whatever, but also maybe some more private spaces where they can tell you things that they maybe aren't willing to say in front of all of the other champs yet. Of course, I highly recommend, something like a Slack channel, Teams channel, Discord, whatever, a place where people can easily share information back and forth. Again, with a champs program and this community management strategy to a champs program, you want them to be able to connect with each other, not just with you. And so you need to create a space where you are not the gatekeeper to allowing these types of conversations to happen. So just think about it. Every place you work is going to be a little bit different on what works, but honestly, just making a Slack channel is a great way to start. And then finally, we have a Confluence /SharePoint/Wiki. We use SharePoint here at Microsoft, but if you're not at Microsoft, something like Confluence, where we keep all of our stuff in one place. All of our videos that we've used, all of our documentation of just anything that has come out of the Champs program in a format that's easily shareable, so that if content that we put in our Champs program is super great, they can share it with other people. And that's key. Being able to take the content in your Champs program and make sure that it can be shared in a short, cohesive way is amazing. You have to think, when people are advocating for stuff on Twitter or social media, they're taking something short, consumable, and sharing it to get other people engaged and interested in the content. You have to be able to do the same thing with whatever it is that you're producing. Once you create space for engagement with your champs, you're going to need to have a few things ready so you can inform them as needed. And hopefully you'll make these and get to keep reusing them, because you'll be having new champs joining your program pretty regularly. Have on deck what your program is, what your program's goals are, how you want to operate your program to reach those goals, and then again, what the impact of the program and hitting those goals actually mean. And you can even use this as an opportunity to give a platform to the champs you're working with to speak for themselves and show the impact that you're having. For us, we're all going to have something similar about how we are a program about accessibility, and that includes education, advocacy, and empathy building. We're all going to have something along the lines of our program's goals are to make better, more accessible, inclusive products. But how we reach them may all be a little different. So have those pieces of information ready to go, bite-sized again, so that they're easily shareable, so that people can take them, process them, and then share them with the rest of the team. Again, being able to actually explain the goal of your champs program and why you have it is going to be key. It's so easy to just form a champs program that is just people who care about accessibility getting in a room talking about accessibility. But without a true goal set and without it codified in a message that the community can share, it's really easy for it just to be kind of a accessibility club. And that's not what we want. We want a strong champs program. So get that information together, define it, and be ready to inform your champs. Once you've informed and engaged, you again move to that last part of the circle, advocate. And again, this is going to be a little bit different than advocating for a game to gamers, because we're going to have a little bit more steps of things that we need to do. Obviously, you're going to need to be able to advocate for your program to champs. You're going to be telling them why it's great, how it can help them, and really showing the value that it's going to be adding. But you're also going to need to advocate for your champs, their time, their work, and everything that they're, making true to the rest of the company. You're going to need to highlight, showcase, and elevate everything that they're doing. And honestly, this is one of my absolute favorite parts of running a champs program, is being able to share the work that the champs and their teams are doing with the rest of Xbox. I cannot tell you how excited I was to repeatedly send emails about the Can I Play That awards that our team got, as well as being able to get them highlighted in newsletters coming from the central accessibility team at Xbox, and even having them highlighted in an Xbox Game Studios All Hands, where everyone got to see the great work that the champs were able to do. And finally, you need to be able to advocate your mission to everyone, champs, non-champs, and really just showcase again how it provides value, about how accessibility really is going to make a better product for everyone and how everyone benefits. And as we keep doing that, you'll again be able to take people from a new member, regular member, to loyal member, to making them advocates themselves, making another little ring off your ring for the community management growth circle, basically. Now, engaging, informing, and advocating won't just build you an amazing champs program. It takes more than that. You have to have trust between you and your champs and the champs in the program. And if you don't have that trust, your program isn't going to go anywhere. And if your champs lose trust, it can be really, really hard to get back. I have seen very, very well-intentioned teams working on products that lost the trust of the gamer, of the player, of the customer, and it took so much work to be able to get that back. So the best thing you can do is build that trust and then not lose it. And there are some key things that you can do to keep that trust. The first is honesty. Be honest. Especially when you're doing a champs program and these are things that you're going to need to partner on to reach a goal. You will need to be honest if something is not going to be easy. Not everything in accessibility is going to be easy all of the time. I would love it to be, but that's not true. And, sometimes we've all worked at a company that had a process that just kind of sucked. And if you know it sucks, but, you're acting like everything is like peachy keen, your champs probably aren't going to trust you. The next is transparency. Share as much as you can when you can. Anytime that you can give visibility into what is happening or will happen soon, you're again building trust. But also be transparent when something doesn't go right. Be honest with your champs and yourself about what happened and why. And then you also need to think about your tone. And I can see this going so many different ways. Like, I take a pretty laid back, chilled tone. My tone for my champs program is just my tone of myself. That may work for you, but you may also need something that's more structured. You may need something that is more in tune with whatever your company culture already is, or fits into your company values or your company voice. Think about what the appropriate thing is and then stick to that tone. And then finally, you need to be able to respond to feedback. If people are telling you ways that you can improve the champs program and they see that information coming in, but they don't see anything coming back out, they're going to lose your trust. Again, you need a community. And for a community, conversations have to flow multiple ways. And so if you're unable to take information from your champs and act on it, whether it's passing information to another team, whether it's working directly with their team to try to improve things, or even if it's just making core changes to the champs program itself, you're going to have a problem. So be sure to respond to feedback. It's absolutely critical. And you should expect feedback. Again, as we said, if we have an advocate in that player growth, of our champion growth, we will want them to provide feedback because they want the best champs program possible. And so if they're doing the work to provide the feedback, you have to be able to take that feedback in. Once you have it, be honest and transparent about what you're doing and why. With some of these pro tips, I think that you really will be able to take your champs from new member to advocate. And here are just a few thoughts I've had every step on the way. So for new members, I would really focus on earning their trust and building their empathy, and showcase why the champs program is a massive benefit to them so that they'll want to come more often. Once they become a regular member, I would work to identify something that they need, identify a struggle, whether it's a resource, an education gap, anything like that, and think about how you or the champs program can fill it. Once you're able to do that, you'll transition them to a loyal supporter. You have given value to them, but you've also made them feel valued because you acted on their input. And once they see you do this, not just for them, but for others, they'll transition to advocate. Once they're an advocate, be sure to showcase their contributions, push their messages wider, and highlight the impact that they are having within their own teams. When you do all this, you'll help build the community and make it stronger. So to conclude, I'm again going to steal some words from Victoria Tran. Community-led growth is all about investing time, cultivating and caring for the members that join early on, and charming them into loving what their community stands for and spreading it to others. This rings true for communities of all sizes. What is a champs program except a community of people who want to push the message of accessibility and disability inclusion further? Thanks so much for watching, and I hope you guys enjoyed this talk. And now, awkwardly back to myself hosting the stream. And if you're on YouTube, thanks. Subscribe to the channel or something, I don't know. All right, bye.
Louise, do you want to be my champs program? Do you want to be my champs program? Are you a good baby? Yeah.